His twin brother was murdered in a mysterious game world to save their mother. But far from letting it go, he will now take his brother's identity and head into the game world himself to get revenge. Many years ago, Yeonwoo's twin brother disappeared. It tore his family apart as they looked everywhere to find him. After years of searching, their mother passed away from her terminal illness after exhausting the last of her energy to find Jungwoo. Yeonwoo knew he had to give up looking for Jungwoo after his mother passed. He volunteered to be dispatched from Korea to Africa, spending years in the military. But one day, he's given a box of his brother's old possessions. Inside, there is a pocket watch that Yeonwoo gifted to Jungwoo for his entrance exam. Aww. When he opens the pocket watch, he notices that it's unexpectedly working despite seeming to be broken. Just when things can't seem more odd, he starts to hear his brother's voice. He hears that his brother just wanted to find a way to cure their mom of her illness. One day, Jungwoo had received a strange text message which promised to make his wish to cure their mother become reality if he completed a task. Jeez, Jungwoo, haven't you ever heard of a phishing scam? But Jungwoo accepted the task that the text offered. After seeing how emaciated his mother was, Jungwoo felt like he didn't have any other option. After that, Jungwoo started dreaming about a world with magical creatures like dragons and orcs. At the center of the world, he imagined a tower ruled by a sun god, with a legendary obelisk inside that would make you a god if you proved yourself. But better yet, inside that tower, Jungwoo was able to see that there was an all-curing elixir that could save his mother. Knowing that he would have to focus to acquire this artifact, he cut all ties with the real world and formed a team called Ardio with his allies to secure this elixir. Jeez, he couldn't just visit once in a while? Unfortunately, things didn't go as smoothly as Jungwoo planned. His clan fought with other clans, and what energy was once put into progressing was now wasted on bloody war after bloody war. He succumbed to addiction and was betrayed by his beloved partner. Even after Jungwoo acquired the elixir, he was surrounded by enemies and unable to transport it home. Knowing his brother was his last hope, Jungwoo sent his memories in pocket watch to Yeonwoo so that he could get the elixir and cure their mother. Despite his sacrifice, Jungwoo never knew that their mother died years ago. When Yeonwoo realizes this and the pain that his brother went through, he feels distraught. He knows that he'll need to secure revenge for his twin brother. With that, he summons a portal with his brother's pocket watch and follows the late Jungwoo into the magical realm. As he enters, Yeonwoo resolves to be the second Cha Jungwoo. He will be his brother's successor. After arriving in the new realm, Yeonwoo decides to check his status window. His in-game nature is cold-blooded, so he'll always be rational even under stressful circumstances, and he's immune to mind control. He also has dragon eyes, meaning that he has a unique perspective on people and objects that lets him see their underlying abilities. As he imagines, he likely has this power as a result of Jungwoo's contract with the ancient dragon, Kalatus. Lastly, Yeonwoo has heightened senses and clairvoyance, also known as the sixth sense, since it can give additional information about people, objects, or places. Because of his preparations before entering, Yeonwoo also has some rations, clothing, and tools that will help him survive. He thought about bringing a gun, but knew he couldn't get more ammo. It would have been pretty funny if he brought one, so that's too bad. Having taken stock of his powers and belongings, Yeonwoo decides to go to the tutorial level. If he wants to have any hope of defeating the people who hurt his brother, he knows that he'll need to score highly and become as powerful as possible. Before he can proceed any further though, a goblin in a suit named Ibukera introduces himself and asks Yeonwoo to disarm. Doesn't this seem like a trap, Yeonwoo? Run! As it turns out, Ibukera is the manager and guide of Floor Zero. He explains that the tutorial is split into 7 parts designated A through G, each with a unique environment and different trials to complete. Depending on how Yeonwoo performs in each trial, he'll receive a score. When he completes the tutorials, they'll be tallied together to calculate his final result. Yeonwoo only has 30 days to complete the tutorial, and it's already a week into the competition. Ibukera warns Yeonwoo that the top players are most likely far ahead, too far to catch up with. He suggests that Yeonwoo will need to make a team if he wants any hope of getting through the trials. After hearing this, Yeonwoo chooses to proceed late into the game, alone. I have an odd feeling he might regret this. As he enters Block A, Yeonwoo notes that he'll have to destroy all of the traps put in unknown locations to proceed. They quickly begin firing, and Yeonwoo has to back against the wall to reduce his exposure. Without mercy, they continue to fire towards his entire body. Yeonwoo is pierced by several of the arrows, and is immediately stunned. Luckily, his cold-blooded nature saves him since he's able to compose himself. He rips the arrow out of his body and uses his lighter to cauterize the wounds. Good thinking. Yeonwoo seems like he's gonna be a really interesting protagonist, and I think his military training will help him a lot. It just takes so much inner strength to do something like cauterizing wounds. Due to his heightened senses, Yeonwoo was able to notice that the arrows were timed and operated on an audible turning cogwheel. To find and destroy the traps in such a dark room, you'll need to keep listening for the timed activation to figure out where they are. After one of the arrow traps activates again, he's able to throw his knife and destroy it. Unfortunately, he'll have to destroy many other traps inside the dungeon. Arrows are being fired at him from every direction, each with a different color that increases a different stat. While he does struggle in the dungeon at some points, he finds that he's becoming incredibly strong as he manages to fend off the arrows. Within 24 hours, Yeonwoo completes the first block and the system heals him. Meanwhile, Ibukera observes all the competitors on a huge collection of monitors. It definitely isn't creepy looking at all. No way. He finds himself watching Yeonwoo the closest, noting that he has a completely different approach to the challenges ahead of him, and that he'll be very special if he stays on this path. After being healed, Yeonwoo passes out. I guess he has been awake for 24 hours, plus however long he was awake in the ordinary world. Get some sleep, dude. He quickly awakens though, as a strange smiling man in a hood looms over him. While he's initially alarmed, Yeonwoo realizes that the man must be a mystery merchant, and that it's a perfect opportunity for him to make his progression in the dungeon more impressive. He offers all of the stats he gained in Block A for a reset ticket. Unlike any other player, Yeonwoo is the first person to ask for a reset ticket. He explains that he really wanted to refine his power and technique. He receives 10 tickets in exchange for his stats. After ripping the first ticket apart and being sent back to the beginning, he's able to progress through Block A in significantly less time and is able to get massive stat increases. He also uses Kalatus's vision to find the traps more easily than before, since it simplifies his perception and allows him to see strange things like hidden levers or concealed machinery. After completing Block A again, he steals himself and enters the boss room. Just as immediately as he arrived, a copper scarecrow blocks his way. As his brother noted, it imitates the player's movement exactly until it has the perfect chance to attack. He barely has any time to strategize against this before the copper scarecrow punches him to the ground. Before the scarecrow can attack any further, Yeonwoo activates his dragon eyes and finds the weak point of the machine. But just before he can stab the weak spot, a mysterious voice shouts for him to go for the sensors. Without hesitating though, Yeonwoo continues what he originally planned and stabs the weak spot. The copper scarecrow explodes in a burst of light, and Yeonwoo completes this part of the trial. After defeating the copper scarecrow, Yeonwoo turns to look at the source of the strange voice. It's a smaller man, and he's amazed by Yeonwoo's abilities. He asks how he knew about the sensors, and the man explains that he has the ability to see mana and notice the magical string operating the puppets. Yeonwoo, seeing an opportunity, asks to be taught about magic. The strange man hadn't been able to escape the dungeon, and Yeonwoo decides that he'll help him progress in exchange for information. The small man introduces himself as Yor, and says that Yeonwoo's fighting capabilities are incredible for someone with no control over magic. Just as things seem to be normal, however, Yeonwoo asks why Yol is disguising himself. With his dragon eyes, Yeonwoo can see that Yol is only around 10 years old. Yol just intends to keep himself safe from stronger players, he explains, and satisfied with the explanation, Yeonwoo only notes that he won't be lenient just because of his age. Yeonwoo tries to act tough, but he genuinely seems like such a sweet and caring protagonist. I really hope he gets a team. As they approach Block B, Yol explains that he can see mana due to an innate genetic ability. Yeonwoo realizes that Jongwoo had a similar ability called Perfect Adaptation that contributed to his prowess with mana and helped him become impressive enough to get the attention of the dragon Kalatus. But as you'll note, he isn't a genius, and many parts of mana control can still be learned. The two clear block A, and Yeonwoo receives a staggering 800 karma for completing it. Yeonwoo and Yul then enter a room filled with injured and weary people lying all around. Yul sees his old teammates and is infuriated that they abandoned him. While Yul is able to explain to Yeonwoo how mana flows, he can't teach him how to begin using it because he always had the ability. With that, the two part ways. Some time ago, after the team who betrayed Yul completed Block A, they were approached by an executor of Arangdan. Arangdan is the dominant clan in the tutorial levels, and highly admired by all who inhabit it. The man was impressed by their performance, and as they explained, the self-sacrifice of their unfortunate team member Yor. When they see Yor in the courtyard, they become worried that he'll tell the executor of Arangdan the truth. As Yor and the traders both know, they threw Yor into the crowd of copper scarecrows so they could run and escape. They try to apologize and beg Yor to not tell anyone of what happened, but he angrily refuses to agree and leaves. Knowing that Yor could ruin their entry into the prolific Arangdan clan, they prepare to kill Yor and prevent him from telling the truth. Just as the traders' leader prepares to strike, Yeonwoo appears behind them in his iconic mask. He might as well start throwing roses in every battle like Tuxedo Mask. He witnessed everything they did, and seeing his brother's betrayal and what Yul experienced, he fully intends to punish them. With one quick swipe, Yeonwoo destroys the leader's wrist. The other traders become enraged, but before they can make any move, he twists the leader, Kane's arm, and holds him captive. He orders them to drop their weapons to save Kane, but proceeds to slash Kane again before punching one of the other traders to the ground. The others begin to charge at Yeonwoo. Yeonwoo knows he'll need to take the others down quickly, so he slashes at their legs and feet before punching them to completely incapacitate them. Yor watches in shock, and as Yeonwoo leaves, he encourages the younger rookie to be careful. Just as Yor tries to stop him from leaving, Yeonwoo gives him one last suggestion: to find the flower garden in Presia and develop his powers further. In the distance, two other rookies watch them. They're impressed by how Yeonwoo managed to beat up the flashy Arangdan recruits, and all by himself at that. They speculate that he must be a solo ranker, but wonder how he'll survive if he catches negative attention from higher ranked Arangdan members. They seem to have a lot of time to kill gossiping, but seriously, I wonder what these guys are going to do. Without much hesitation, Yeonwoo proceeds to Block B. As he understands from his brother's notes, Block B is a collection of doors, with the level contained ahead increasing in difficulty depending on how far right the door you choose is. Each door contains a different artifact, some significantly better than the others. Knowing this, Yeonwoo decides that he'll acquire the Batori's vampiric dagger from the Black Door route. The room he enters contains a body of water known as Chonjongsu's Pond, created after the giant Mimiru accidentally spilled water he was carrying. The water is inhabitable, but as he confirms by kicking a rock into it, it's also so incredibly dense and high pressure that it would crush anyone who stepped into it. Instead of trying to enter the water, Yeonwoo activates his dragon eyes to find what he was really looking for: a hidden passage. Once it's revealed, he proceeds down the winding staircase into the room of fire and ice. The walls are covered with white moss, and terrifyingly large insects scurry around. I don't know why Yeonwoo would choose to fight them, but personally, I would quit the game around this point. Fortunately, Yeonwoo has a lot of information to help him through the room. The white moss is actually a miracle drug that ordinarily just causes a stomach ache, but can be ingested with beneficial effects when combined with the heart of an animal capable of digesting the white moss. Since there are so many insects around, he prepares to kill one and take its heart to activate the white moss's powers. Spotting a red centipede, Yeonwoo decides it's the perfect target. From his brother's notes, he knows that they have atrophied eyes but well-developed senses, making the two similar fighters since Yeonwoo will be relying on his own heightened senses in such a dark room. As he prepares to fight, he's also given a quest: to kill as many monsters as possible within the room. Without hesitation, Yeonwoo activates his dragon eyes. Since he's able to quickly spot the centipede's weak points, he'll just need to wait for the right timing to break through the centipede's tough exoskeleton and avoid being attacked. Unfortunately, just as he goes for the kill, he finds his knife blocked by a second internal chitin skeleton. The centipede quickly whips Yeonwoo away with its tail and slams him against the wall. I wonder why he couldn't see the second exoskeleton with his dragon eyes? Maybe he needs to level up more. His vein in his left thigh is ruptured and he has 2 spine fractures from the impact. How he even knows this, I have no clue. I guess he has the anime protagonist medical training. But because of his cold-blooded nature, he's quickly able to compose himself and rise again. Without hesitating, he runs toward the red centipede again and slices its abdomen. Blue blood gushes out everywhere, and the two fall to the ground side by side. After catching his breath for a few minutes, Yeonwoo eats a handful of white moss and the centipede's glowing blue heart. Power quickly begins to flow into him. Back at the courtyard, the executor of Rangdan finds Kane and one of the other traitors injured. When he hears that a man in a white mask beat the Rangdan recruits despite knowing that they were under the clan's protection, he's enraged and vows to find and punish him. It seems like our protagonist is getting in a lot of clan war trouble already, just like his brother. After eating the synergetic centipede heart and white moss, Yeonwoo quickly heals. His bones restore where they were broken and become stronger, and his torn muscles are repaired. Best of all, he's awarded progress in his quest and recognized for his ability to kill the red centipede. He now has the physical resistance skill, which will keep him fighting even through unbearable pain, and the quick thinking skill, which will help him determine what to do next even under immense pressure. Even despite this progress, however, Yeonwoo knows it isn't enough. To accept the power from the ancient dragon Kalatus that his brother once enjoyed, he'll need to gain a lot of mana. But rather than ruminating on this, he continues fighting. His kill count goes up to 147 monsters as he kills bat monsters, before he's brought to a standstill by a colony of giant blue army ants. Knowing that they'll all coordinate to kill him if he attacks, he lingers out of sight and thinks about what to do next. With his new quick thinking skill, however, it isn't hard for him to make the next move. He mixes white moss, red centipede blood, and bat teeth together to create an explosive monster powder. He throws bags of the powder into the colony and then ignites one, killing most of the ants and severely burning the rest. He'll need to sneak by the survivors and the boss queen ant in order to reach the room where Batory's vampiric dagger is held. Due to the rare nature of the dagger, it's crucial that he gets it. Each artifact has a unique number, and Batory's vampiric dagger is numbered 352, incredibly low and a clear indication of its power and rarity. The weapon was so powerful that even hundreds of years after the vampiric monarch died, other clans still suffered from the wounds she carved into their armies. Despite how scary the surviving colony is, Yeonwoo steels himself to find a way past them and acquire the legendary weapon at any cost. Before he can prepare himself, the queen ant notices Yeonwoo and lunges towards him. He manages to throw several knives at her and hack some of her legs away, immobilizing her. Before any of the worker ants can strike, he then runs past the colony and enters the shrine of the vampiric monarch Batory. Inside the shrine, there's a statue of Batory holding her legendary dagger. As Yeonwoo recalls, the dagger causes opponents to bleed and sucks their life force away when used. But there's also a secret to it, which his brother fortunately disclosed. Batory's vampiric dagger chooses its wielder and consumes the mind of anyone who isn't chosen. Without hesitation, Yeonwoo grabs the dagger and stabs his own hand. The vampiric monarch was so greedy she couldn't bear the thought of anyone else using the dagger after her death. But the seal was created with a way of breaking it for anyone who was truly worthy. The seal breaks with Yeonwoo's self-mutilation, and the true form, numbered 66, is revealed. Yeonwoo's hand is surrounded by a shadowy form with jagged teeth. With the ability of his new magical dagger bound to his body, he can bleed opponents of their life force and even steal their abilities by using the vampiric monarch's authority. With his newfound power, he quickly goes back out to the ant colony to complete his quest. Using the dagger, Yeonwoo is quickly able to drain the rest of the ants of their life force and proceeds past the area. Meanwhile, the two observers from earlier follow Yeonwoo's path into the room of fire and ice. They're amazed by the life-drained ant husks and realize that they'll need to recruit the powerful player before anyone else can. Just as they reach the ant colony, they hear Yeonwoo in the distance. Having completed his quest, which unfortunately means the deaths of a bunch of cute salamanders, Yeonwoo's body begins to change. It now has the heart of fire and crest of frost. Is he slowly becoming the avatar? After gaining a new skill, Yeonwoo also notices that his skill numbers in general have made a dramatic increase. He realizes that he's more powerful now than before. He looks over at the nifty looking skills that he now has and will likely help him again in the future. Such abilities like the ability to self-heal in case he loses a limb, which is pretty useful considering the bosses and monsters he might be facing. His body maturity soon increases up to 21%, so he's not even halfway close. In order to complete his maturity, he needs a vessel, having already gotten a skill that would help complete the process. The question now is this: where is he going to find a vessel? Yeonwoo also takes this opportunity to decline the chance to register his name, to avoid people being suspicious of him. With what he had done in the dungeon, his rank does at least increase up to 280 first spot, but he's still far behind the higher and stronger ranked people, such as the top 3 named Edora, Fante, and Khan. If Yeonwoo wishes to reach the top 3 in the ranks, then he's going to have to train harder until his bones give out. Just then, Yeonwoo senses that he's not alone in this dungeon, and he becomes concerned that the people he met earlier are coming after him for some petty vengeance against him. With his dagger at the ready, Yeonwoo is ready for whatever awaits him. Hopefully nothing cute like the ants or salamanders. They don't deserve to die. It turns out to be a man named Doyle, who narrowly misses the dagger Yeonwoo fires at him. Doyle's friend, Khan, smacks the incoming dagger away from them and gets mad that some random guy like Yeonwoo just tried to kill his close friend and demands an explanation for why he did that. The two are confused. Yeonwoo is confused as to why the two are following him, while Khan is confused with why Yeonwoo had brought up someone like Arangdan, so it's clearly not him. Khan at least apologizes for sneaking up on Yeonwoo as he explains the daggers of sneaking up on someone as prepared as him. Doyle just remains quiet and looks quite dizzy from falling back trying to dodge the dagger. Yeonwoo doesn't seem as satisfied about the apology and is probably still suspicious of the two boys despite them being friendly to him. Khan then reveals his intention as to why he and Doyle had followed Yeonwoo. He wishes for him to become his comrade, but Yeonwoo again doesn't seem interested in associating with the two, and Doyle seems to know this too, judging by his cringe expression. So much so that he even scolds Khan. Yeonwoo just thinks that he's an idiot and goes on his way. Khan stops him from leaving as he didn't answer his question, so Yeonwoo shoots him down brutally as he doesn't find either Khan or Doyle worth the effort to be around. Ow, how hurtful of him to say. Yeonwoo continues to get annoyed with Khan, even as he boasts about being the biggest star of the tutorial area. Doyle decides that now's the time to finally step in and defend Khan, even as he insults his friend. Doyle then defends Khan by telling Yeonwoo that he's not a bad person before introducing himself and Khan to Yeonwoo. Yeonwoo realizes that they're in 11th place and 3rd place of the ranks respectfully, though it makes Doyle embarrassed when Yeonwoo brings it up, as unlike his snobby friend, he doesn't like to bring up his social status to people. Yeonwoo tries to see if he can trust them by using his Dragon Eye abilities, which reads to see if a person has good or bad auras, and fortunately for him, the two seem trustworthy, if a bit dumb. He's confused over the fact that the two are in an area of the trials that they had already cleared, instead of a place with more of a challenge. It seems as though the two are looking for something in this area, judging by Doyle's happiness when Yeonwoo tells him that he's currently not in a team or clan. Doyle needs his help in getting the artifact in question, since other people in this area are already in a team or group. Yeonwoo is still annoyed that he attracted the attention of people like Doyle and Khan, and guesses that the item they're looking for is a crown belonging to an evil and probably powerful boss named Hargon. Yeonwoo remembers that his brother and his team have come across Hargon before. Although difficult, Yeonwoo doesn't like the crown, as all it does is give the person that's wearing it a high commanding level. Why would he want it when he doesn't want to command or lead a team, and can just solo dungeons like the pro ranker that he is? His brother's fight with Hargon also brings back painful memories of his brother getting betrayed, which is why he doesn't want to be in a group or team. Understandable. If I was Yeonwoo, I would just get the heck out of Dodge even if Doyle and Khan are nice. Still, Yeonwoo still agrees since he can gain experience just by getting the crown, but he only agrees to join Doyle and Khan's quest under one condition, that he'll get all the other rewards except for the crown, which troubles Doyle and Khan as they likely want to hog the rewards for themselves as well as that crown. Yeonwoo then introduces himself as Kane. If I was Doyle and Khan at this point, then I would watch my back. As the trio go further into the dungeon to search for Hargon, Khan is impressed with how swiftly Yeonwoo, Kane, keeps killing the goblins they face, and rather brutally too.
they were probably only minding their business. Coming across a door, the trio soon finds themselves in an outdoor area. It's likely some magical timey-wimey illusion spell that they came across. Still, the sunlight manages to hurt their eyes. Yeonwoo realizes that they're in Area E of the dungeon, which is part of the tutorial area for people like him, Doyle, and Khan to test their skills. As Yeonwoo continues looking around, a tiny blue orb drops on his hand. To me, it looks like a tiny gumball, but to Khan, it makes him sick just by looking at it for some reason. There are also some hidden codes located around Area E that the trio must find, and since this is a large area that they're now in, it's likely going to take a while to find them all. Since some of the codes are hard to find, they'll have to spend a few tedious hours finding some of them. Even Yeonwoo's brother finds these sorts of tasks hard, and I would too if I was in their shoes. Yeonwoo didn't expect the tiny blue balls, known as marks, would be important in dungeons. Doyle meanwhile doesn't seem to care. He simply yawns and looks tired, and since the trio are in a warmer room compared to the last 4 rooms, he'll probably sleep soon while Yeonwoo and Khan try to find a hidden piece they're looking for. Compared to the Rocky Mountains in the east room, the plains in the west room, the hilltops in the south room, the forests in the north, and the swamps in the far north, this area seems peaceful to be in for the trio to look for the hidden codes, without the risk of running into monsters. Although there's still a possibility as each area has a specific monster that they could run into. And since the trio are likely heading north in the area, there are likely going to be dangerous, high-level monsters the more they keep going into further areas. Yeonwoo just hopes to avoid more players that are crazier than the monsters themselves. And it would be understandable considering how nuts some people tend to be in this story. It's wise for Yeonwoo to keep his guard up. He particularly hopes not to run into a group of thieves run by some sinister-looking guy named Frank. Frank tends to take advantage of newer players so he and his group can steal their tokens and artifacts, and thus acts like a total toxic player. Tokens tend to be valuable and sell at high prices in markets, hence the reason why people like Frank and his crony gang of outlaws steal them. They also tend to capture players for malicious intentions, most notably as live human lab rats for experiments. Yeonwoo feels as though Khan and Doyle would be the kind of players that would be kidnapped by Frank and his crew. But Yeonwoo at least doesn't have to worry about something like that happening to them soon, since he kills 21 thieves soon after that tried to sneak up, and stab him in the back. Having killed 21 thieves that tried to rob him, the remaining thieves run off in the forest. Yeonwoo and Doyle begin checking out how many tokens they've got, which they got plenty of after checking out all the bodies. Doyle also knows how valuable and good looking the tokens are, and deduces that the tokens they just got from the bodies of the thieves used to belong to other players. You know, before they all died at the thieves' hands. The area itself is a winner-takes-all system where the richer and greedy players tend to outsmart the poorer and inexperienced players. The inexperienced players tend to get extorted for tokens no matter how much they try to hide anything valuable from thieves. Doyle intends to get as many tokens for the group as possible, so they can buy some useful and powerful weapons from traders, including a mysterious trader and some karma. I hope Frank and his group get karma soon enough for what they're doing. Doyle wishes for Yeonwoo to have the tokens that they collected, since they already have enough tokens as of right now. This makes the journey more easier on Yeonwoo's part than what he anticipated, and this is closer to completing the succession process and becoming the magical and mature dragon boy that he's always dreamed of being recently. Once he does, he'll be ready to take on the man. While Yeonwoo continues thinking about the man for a while, Khan decides to make a fire as Yeonwoo meanwhile notices that Doyle is doing some magical and cute things with a couple of flies that he found. The flies, known as flame bugs, are used to help with the fire. They tend to burn themselves when facing their enemies. They sound like they're annoying to deal with if the trio have to fight them in the future. But there's more bugs like them the farther they go into areas. There are probably some in other areas that Yeonwoo had gone through, but he missed them. The next day, Yeonwoo takes down not one but dozens of large muscular lizard men who are smart enough to carry around spears. Khan meanwhile finds it confusing that Yeonwoo is extracting various body parts from the lizards' bodies. However, Yeonwoo tends to find them useful enough to use to make certain artifacts that would benefit him and only him due to his loner type of personality. He wishes to use the body parts that he got from the lizards to make a ring called the Gaija's Eyes. Doyle and Khan go on ahead, but they soon find large monstrous looking footsteps and are concerned that someone has gone ahead of them. Someone who's dangerous and likely to poke their eyes out like what Yeonwoo had done to the lizards. Yeonwoo himself checks out the footsteps and they appear to be new. So whoever had come by appeared around 5 to 6 hours ago. Khan tries to join in on Yeonwoo's investigation too, being the Watson to Yeonwoo's Sherlock. Doyle is more worried that the group that came before them may have gotten Hargon's crown, since players try to find hidden places in the area they're in, with Hargon's lair being one of them, which would mean the quest for the crown would be worthless if someone already beat them to it. But Yeonwoo doesn't think that the group that came before them was looking for Hargon's lair, but something else entirely. Khan is confused by this, so Yeonwoo just points it out for him. Someone was being dragged through the mud, and probably not in a friendly manner if I might add. It was likely a dead body that was being dragged. In spite of this, Khan is calm by this news. Doyle, however, is not. When Yeonwoo looks at him, he looks troubled. But I wonder what would trouble a boy like him. Gritting their teeth, Doyle is unable to hide their sour expression from Yeonwoo. They seem to notice Yeon looking and quickly conceal the anger behind a smile, but it's too late. He already knows something is bothering him. For the moment, Khan diverts his attention by remembering that they haven't yet told Kane, Yeonwoo's alias, about the place they will be raiding. He already knows what it's called, but feigns ignorance for the moment, choosing the smart move, expected of a trained soldier. The place is called Hargon's Lair. Their target is the king himself, a lizard to rule them all. Normally, Khan and Doyle would stand no chance against such a being, though with Kane here, that story may sing a different tune. But much to Kane's surprise, Hargon himself isn't the biggest problem here. The problem is the female lizard who resides with him. This dungeon has two bosses who must be fought apart. The plan of action is for Khan to distract Hargon outside, while Kane and Doyle sneak back to the female. While Kane is distracting her, Doyle will remove the crown and they'll all make a break for it. Approaching the lair, many lizard people guard outside, keeping watch for their leader. As soon as the group is spotted, the alarm is raised and the blue meathead menacingly approaches them from behind the soldiers. At least this creature has the guts to stand before them itself. Though its roar is mighty and power great, the challenge for Hargon comes when he realizes that Kane is not the slightest bit afraid of him. Charging headlong into battle, Khan stops his blade mid-swing to give his friends a chance to get behind the enemy. While the lizard men are distracted, they do just that, all according to plan. While Khan lures him away from the entrance, the other two slip in unnoticed. Kane easily nails two guards in the head with precision knife throws, and while retrieving his blades, they hear calls of help from a nearby cell. Bones, skulls, and blood litter the floor. The lizards have been catching humans to use as livestock for their offspring. This is a food reserve. Kane quickly turns around and tells Doyle that they have to get a move on, because if they spend time freeing these people, they may not reach the crown in time. Doyle tries to object to this as any normal human being would, but right now they just don't have the resource of time to spend. If they don't hurry, Khan's life will be in danger, and by proxy, so will theirs. If Doyle acts on his own, Kane will quit this plan and leave him for the wolves, so to speak. But then he has an idea. If Hargon plans to use humans to feed his offspring, then why don't they just do the opposite here? Quickly recatching Doyle's attention, the boy is to gather all the firebugs he can. There may yet be a way to save these people. The queen effortlessly throws her men around, whacking one with her club while enraged that puny humans have dared enter her despicable lair. She seems to be of the notion that they are here for her babies, and not the crown. Much to her disgust, Kane steps up and gets her attention, eating a bag of that leftover fiery powder into her nest. Do you like fireworks and the smell of burnt corpse? The queen smacks it out of the air, causing the bag to burst. The fine particles spread out and cloud the nest, giving Doyle just the opportunity needed. With a small troop of firebugs, he sets the mixture alight and burns the lizard queen alive. She survives by the skin of her teeth, but it's too late for her royal pain, as Kane is already taking out her children and enraging her further. The queen blindly charges at him, stepping in what remains of the powder with firebugs hot on her heels. In a furious scream, she set alight for the last time, collapsing dead on the floor with the last one in her arms. With her death, the entire cave has been demoralized. Kane stands over the burned remains, looking down upon the fallen enemy while Doyle grabs the crown from her head. In the worst fashion of bad timing, Hargon chooses this moment to enter the room. Hargon then begins to enter his second phase. By absorbing the power of his wife, his stats mutate, causing the already oversized handbag to grow to new heights. The group is forced to hide as he continues to strengthen, and his signature ability shows itself, Heat Wave. If Kane is late even by a split second, he would be disintegrated without mercy. Suddenly, a small bug flies up to Kane. Doyle's voice reaches through it telepathically, asking if Kane has a solution to the problem, which of course he does. He's the protagonist. They always have clever solutions. He instructs the kid to pass this plan to Khan as well. As Doyle does so, Kane jumps up in front of the big scary boss monster, making a real habit of doing that, aren't you? And this time, prompts it for a fight. Hargon swings down with all his might, and Cain uses his dragon eyes to spot the blade's weak point. Defending with his knife, the two blades intersect and a chink is cut into the bigger one because of all the force used. Clever man! Using that force against him, Cain pushes the blade aside and into the ground while yelling, "Okay, now!" Khan is the first to strike, already on the front lines from Cain's call. His attack takes the boss by storm and forces it to recoil right into Doyle's flamebug friends. Using the stun mechanic to his advantage, they keep hitting Hargon and forcing him out of his ability charge. If they can keep this up, he won't be able to land a hit. The more Hargon tries, the faster his stamina depletes. Finally wearing him down, the light of rage begins to fade from the king's eyes as his body has been battered to tatters and worse. As a nail to his coffin, Cain forces him to kneel and puts a palm to the back of his head. He finally unleashes Batory's dagger, sapping the very life from his target along with a portion of its energy. In one final attempt to take the humans out with him, Hargon manages to execute his ability and damage Cain, but it doesn't kill him. Once the system is done configuring the stolen skill of Heatwave, it settles on rewarding him with the ability of Flame Infusion. Once he's out of the menus, both Khan and Doyle rush to his side, practically begging him to heal and rest. He tells them not to worry and to instead get those people out of the cage. When they do, the men are crying and joyous at finally being set free, even if in a dark underground dungeon. It doesn't take long for Khan and Doyle to get recognized, however, as two of the top players in the tutorial. They are quick to admit this, though add that it would not have been possible without Cain. Suddenly the room goes silent as everyone looks to him. The man who had said to leave them behind, a sour taste on the edge of their tongues. One of them even goes so far as to call him inhuman, which Khan doesn't take lightly. Cain had not only risked his life to save theirs, but him and Doyle got injured in the process. The guy turns to his subordinates, but none of them step in to back him up, so he's left out to dry and forced by the pressure to apologize. The whole time he's thinking of his mates as traitors. The boss had put his life on the line to get them whatever they needed within the cell, yet they can't even man up and defend him when he needs them. I mean, to be fair, would you want to put yourself against one of the top players? Khan don't look too happy. After the fact, his men approach him with apologies and a fresh plan. While they won't kill their saviors out of respect, or rather because they stand no chance, they won't survive the night outside without fresh gear. So for now, they should just take what they need and make a break for it. One of his buddies has a trait called Quick Hands, so if the boss is in, they can start ironing out details of the plan. In the meantime, Cain settles his dues with Khan and Doyle. As agreed, they will be taking Hargon's crown, while everything else in this labyrinth belongs to him. This includes the weapons and stuff lying around, but also means the deed to the lair itself. Though the giant sword over there was useless to him, things like Krashina's dagger suited quite nicely. As an added bonus, it would level up with him from this point on. Doyle asks if something is wrong as Cain looks up, saying there's nothing worthless here but nothing of real use either. But if the mysterious merchant kept straining his neck like that from watching, he'd hurt himself. The trader comes down to greet them and Khan gets a sickening feeling. Last time they'd met wasn't a pleasant one. Cain seems to have been acknowledged by the guy as well, further adding to the mystique already rampant around him. After some talking, the trader is surprised by his offer of the ownership and scimitar for 150 tokens. But the more times the trader wastes, the higher Cain's deal goes. And if his offer is rejected, he'd just destroy the entire nest, including all its magic stones. The trader tries to work his way around this with a sneak roll, but gets a nat 1, as Cain bluntly acknowledges that stones with over 70% purity must be a pretty rare find. But hey, he's the mysterious trader and the best guy around, so he should know, right? In hindsight, it was very odd for the system to reward him with so little when it came to the lair and items inside. They defeated two bosses simultaneously, so the rewards had to scale with the achievement. The only feasible explanation is that the land must be worth something, and since it's underground, it could be concluded that rich deposits of high-grade materials would be present. Magic stones have a lot of uses, much like a real-life electric conductor, and high quality is quite hard to come by at this stage. The trader keeps trying to haggle, so the offer increases again. The final price is set at 405 stones, the extra being for wasting more of his time. Cain would now like to buy something, but before the trader could set a price, he's instructed to lump it in with the other deal or it would be cancelled. A very smart move that gets the poor trader's blood boiling, almost literally. He pulls out a fresh white mask, which is what Cain is looking for, namely the face of the white ghost. A mask made of souls, one that can also repair itself with fresh harvest. Neat little party trick. As the trader is leaving, they ask if the reason Cain was so confident was because he'd known what happened on the other side. The answer is, of course, no, but it can be once again assumed that the reason that man would need this many high quality stones and go for such an absurdly one-sided deal is that he has a current market for them. With the stones being a key ingredient in forging high-quality magical items, the only logical way there would even be a demand for such high-quality gear is if a war had broken. Khan asks what Kane plans to do now, and is told that he won't be going to Block F anytime soon. There's still something within this area he needs to accomplish. Doyle pipes up that the two of them have been thinking. They all seem to work pretty great as a team, so why not partner for whatever lays in the future? Immediate rejection. Kane is not willing to risk his life in the same way his brother had, though uses the more palatable excuse of not being a social person and preferring to be a lone wolf. They will, however, be leaving this place together, and Khan reminds them all that there are people waiting for them outside. For the moment, they will be escorting everyone outside of the swamp because it would mean their deaths if they tried to leave themselves. A man then steps forward to ask Doyle for something to eat, as nobody had much in the cave. Little do they know he's taking it back to the shady guy who suggested an ambush, the one named Eden. This foul cretin of a human wants not only to take the gear of his saviors, but to abuse them in climbing the ranks. The first part of Eden's plan is to steal what little Khan and Doyle have, while the idiot Brandon gives him the good old one too. They're all a bunch of morons if they think the artifacts and tokens are the only goal. Indeed, just stealing items is not enough. Their opponents are the 3rd and 11th ranks respectively. And then there was that other guy who took on the Lizard King. But there's one small problem. Okay, one human-sized problem. Kane is too smart for this, and staring at those cold white eyes behind that musk is like looking straight into a goblin. He sees right through you and into your head, your thoughts becoming an open book. Someone approaches Khan and Doyle about slowing their pacing through the forest a bit, even asking to halt because some people are feeling under the weather. Others even try acting up, saying they quit, or they'd all just get glomped by monsters when leaving anyway. Khan briefly considers leaving them before the old boss man steps forth, echoing the sentiments of his comrades. If they said yes, there were no shortage of scavengers lying in wait for them. This would be a great haul, or rather it would have been, if Kane weren't here. Eden has his head taken off in a gruesome fashion, and immediately Kane is looking to the rest of the group, leaping into action to dispose of any connections Eden may have had. He was able to deduce their plan thanks to the heightened senses being in passive mode, picking up on a few things such as how Eden always observed him or talked to other players. He had widened the range of his senses just in case and turned out to be well worth it, for hiding among the grass of a larger open space were a whole lot of people with not so good intentions for their group in particular. The only reason for this would be obvious: scavengers. Yeah, lot of good that soldier training did ya. Suck it, Demo Man. Already acting out his first moves before they even get to the destination, Khan gets in his way while trying to be a hero, obviously not knowing what the fluff is going on and wanting answers. If he ain't dumb, then he's naive. If he still don't know what's going on, just be quiet and stay put. Only then do him and Doyle notice the group of armed men staring with angry smiles at their location. Surrounded by the creeps they'd saved, the majority of them with a weapon and knowledge of how to use one, the boss asks what the heck everyone is doing right before he gets slaughtered. The poor dude. So these ingrates will even kill normal players? Then their lives have become forfeit. The people who run the human farm on this side of the tower aren't just small-time bandits looking to make a cut. They're traffickers who make deals with monsters. Luring victims with the guise of being hurt and asking for help, they would instead loot the corpse and sell that flesh to the beast as a food source. While people a length away are talking through magical amulets about the gear that they want, nobody seems to notice their doom rapidly approaching. With Eden being late to message them on the status of their prey, one asks to send a message to him, but neither him nor the other guy will reply. That could only mean one possible outcome. Enemies have arrived and they ain't no small fry. While his rank alone is 15, the murderer's skills are on par with those in the top 10 of the ranks. Oh, is that so, big shot? Then explain why you couldn't even see Kane coming, much less the corpse of the guy shuffling toward you. As his dying friend falls into the forever sleep, he mumbles some disturbing last words. Run! Ghost! But it's too late. Oh my wa motion teru, as Kane is right behind you. Oh hey, that rhymes. In the meantime, Khan is asking himself the big questions such as where the heck the people from Arang were. Ain't they supposed to police the scavenger groups to make this already hard tutorial a bit more fair? Before he can even set his brain on fire with thoughts like this, Kane appears out of nowhere and begins cleaning house of the remaining forces. Doyle is very unhappily using his insects to swarm a few, and Khan is putting that sword to some good use. In the end, the few bodies that remain are begging for mercy and surrendering, pleading for their lives after being hopelessly outmatched in every way. Khan then asks a very simple question to these dirty men. How are they any different than Hargon? How are they any different from the Lizard King who had committed cannibalism? He then cuts them down, saying that at least Hargon had feelings for his family, crying while they died. But these men probably enjoyed killing others. After the deeds are done, Khan asks Kane how come he's just fine with this. Soldiers see a lot of stuff we have nightmares about. Is everyone from his world like him? No, because his world would have gone crazy if so. He's rather frank with Kane now. Both of them are scared of him as well. He must have been cautious about these men from the very start if he never lost his cool. He had never trusted anyone to begin with, had he? Not even his own teammates. While that's true, these two weren't total strangers to him. They had a warm aura between them, spreading from Khan's laughter and Doyle's affectionate nature. But their worldviews differ too greatly, so in an effort to save them the trouble, Kane decides to take his leave then and there. This was indeed for the best though. Maybe Doyle didn't notice it at first, but he sure as heck does now. There, on the very hilt of the sword sticking out from its earthly grave, is a tassel of green string and white beads, the hallmark of the Adan Guild. It's quite odd now that he thinks about it. Why would they who police these tutorial lands of the tower be taking part in such an obscene activity? Unless of course they wanted to better control the groups within this region. Khan was right not to drag Kane into this mess of a play. He would only have gotten in the man's way and had him get involved in something he had no place in. Doyle should head over to their objective, the Sword Big Reed, while he goes to see Sir Build. Doyle isn't going to leave his friend alone to face the horrors though. He's willing to go with Khan and face the dude himself. See what the man who sent an assassin scav team after them. While Kane is walking away and keeping those two on his radar with heightened senses, it becomes pretty easy to see what they'll be doing next. Fools, he mutters to himself. But while they are headed down their own paths, he must tread his way east at any cost, and proceed with his master plan. Meanwhile, in the Adang HQ for the region, Build is angry that Squad 2 had been completely TPK'd and they had lost Hargon all for nothing. It was time to bring out the big guns. It was time to prepare Squad 1. Elite members of the Adang personally trained by the Azure Sword Guild. Build himself would be moving in for the kill as well, but they would have to be immensely careful. The people behind Khan and Doyle were a powerful force if they were able to dispatch the second best in their arsenal. The masked man was likely trained by some even scarier entities than they had ever seen. But before much else could be discussed or thought of, a soldier comes bolting into the room with the warning. Bloodsword and Foxytail had arrived for a health inspection. That is to say, Build's pulse was too high above zero. But he begs to differ with the inspectors, being eager to play with the whelp of the Iron Lion, likely his father's title. They clash swords in brilliant display, while far, far away, Kane is sneaking up and into an encampment of pig-looking orcs. Taking two out with zero hesitation, he pins the last one at knife point and asks straight where he could find a certain person. A hunter's house, the one of someone who lives around the area. Answer, yes. Go to the top of Bow Tree Mountain and you'd find the one you seek. His goal is what the person knows, the location of the Akasha snake. Legend has it the Akasha snake comes out to breathe only during certain times, and his little brother was unfortunate enough to encounter it. His first master, Galliad, had come to save him from death. Knocking on the door, the dark elf comes up from behind him. Their species is one skilled in warfare, and he's no exception to this. As soon as Kane mentions he's looking for Undine's glass, the guy is cautious. When he name drops Brahm, it's just annoyed resignation that his friend had slipped the tongue again. They immediately get to talking about the price Kane has to pay for it, and it's actually rather simple. A game of hide and go seek? For something this rare and probably powerful? Okay, you do you. His reward will depend on how many times he manages to catch the Dark Elf, but should one succeed in catching him every single time, they would learn the skill Blinking Steps. The key here is that it can evolve into the unanimously known teleport skill, a little trademark of the current number 1 on the ranks, all for one. Anyhow, this test is simple. He just has to find and touch Galliad a set amount of times and he'll win. He easily spots and knife throws Galliad, using the fatal flaw of Blinking Steps, the fact its user has to touch the ground. Forcing Galliad to dodge from his next hiding place within a willow tree across from his location, Kane is quick to slip behind him and gets a touch. 6 more out of 10 would follow, making him eligible for the largest prize. The Dark Elf is completely taken by surprise that he could be caught that easily. Handing him the earned prize of Undine's glass in a cheap-looking leather bag, Galliad does warn not to drop it. This stuff will go kaboom if it's brought outside the glass and into the physical world. Also handed over is the skill of Blinking Steps, while the elf laments a bit at getting too old for this stuff. There were others who came before him? Yeah, those twin siblings at the top of the tutorial leaderboard, Edera and Fonte. Makes sense for them to have come here of all places judging by the massive amount of points they had over the others. Galliad asks why he needs the glass when he don't look like no alchemist or elementalist, and the truth is pretty straightforward. But alas, the snake is already dead, chief. Was killed by them twins from earlier. Going to the location and investigating a little bit deeper, Kane finds quite a lot of battle marks and blood littering the rocky floor alongside long sweeps of a blade of some kind, and then he spots something to one side. The snake's corpse, cut open and missing 2 crucial components, its core and venom gland. But how the flip did they manage to kill something like this on their own? The same way you planned to, Einstein. Taking off his mask for a small breather, Kane takes a moment to think. His plans of getting to first are now in tatters. He'd never make it with the time he had left. And then something else catches his eye. The snake's head has been cut wide open. A lot of bloody footprints were present here, indicating another party after those twins had been through this area. They were most likely the orcs from earlier. Meanwhile, in the Adan Guild headquarters, Bane, who is 6th on the leaderboards, is being told to go out on the hunt. He's part of Squad 1, though the next words of the messenger catch his ears. This is Sir Build's special order. He's informed everyone that those who don't follow his orders will have his head cut off. Oh frick, he's serious now. And anyone to complete this mission will have all the tokens Adang has gathered, but a word of caution that their targets wipe the floor with Squad 2. Out in the wilds, Kane is making good use of those blinking steps to get around and find the lair of Akasha Snake. There be a secret afoot, matey. To a tune of beating drums, roaring flame, and the sound of silence, many followers gathered to the altar where the brain of the snake sits among a good many corpses. Their god would arise from its grave once more, using the souls of the dead as fuel for its insatiable hunger. At first, it may seem like they've all gone completely cuckoo, but the brain reacts, and out of its disgusting mass, a new snake springs from hidden coil. This hidden quest is one to stop the resurrection of the snake by slaying it before the beast can grow larger. Instead, he begins to consider that the snake may work better for his plan, and begins hatching a plan to begin feeding it, much like Batory's vampiric dagger. Later in the camp of the lizardmen, the warriors are trying to prevent word out that their king has died. If the orcs of all people find out, it will be a war they cannot win without their rulers. But as his subordinates leave, the lizard gets killed by Cain and an orc corpse dumped nearby. If anyone sees this, it would be easily assumed the two had fought and killed each other, sparking the flames of a war far worse than the measly fire which will soon engulf the lizard camp. Two soldiers have already spotted the intruder, and assumptions are being formed. His final move is to go and rattle the cages of the orcs and other creatures. It's time to sit back with popcorn for some fireworks, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. The flames that began in the western jungle regions were incomparably tiny at first, nowhere near enough to start a panic. But that all began to change when an abandoned kobold village was set aflame, used as fuel. Monsters vacated the area, confusion and pain set in like the wildfires raging through their former home territories. The Goblin King is notified of a few dead orcs in their village, and soon, messengers from the other tribes of the kobold who also had their infamous king slaughtered like a lamb to the wolves. The orcs had attacked them both, so a short-lived truce would be formed and an alliance forged. Time to get some sweet chili revenge. With the lizardmen having gone to war with the orcs as well, the Goblin King feels that it would be a cowardly move to not be present and etch their names in history. They all agree to follow him to the battlefield, and the entire unit moves out as one. Cain is rewarded with additional karma for sparking a monster rush between the races. And now that they're all going toward their death, the snake would have more than enough to be the biggest in the history of any tutorial. This would be a good catch. Meanwhile, up in the mountains, while two idiots from Squad 1 are starting fights with each other, the ground begins to shake as the giant horde clambers towards them. Endless rows of both Goblin and Kobold are present and unhappy with the humans in their way. With this many small fry in one place, even the top echelon of the Adang doesn't stand a chance all alone. The dude from before is adamant that he's not going down to such weak monsters, as his goal was to get to the top. Keyword was. One axe throw later, and he joins the others in an afterlife of pain. It is around this time where the Orc King is told about the invaders rushing toward them, the crazy lizards who have broken through the north wall. But wait, this isn't a bad thing. It means much more sacrifice for their deity. Exactly what they want, right? More blood for the snake god. His soldiers to go and tell the shaman to be careful and that more sacrifices will be coming to the cave soon enough. But no matter how much the orcs try at the edge of their territory, the wall simply won't hold up to the sheer power it's trying to hold back. Giant goblins are breaking it with clubs and huge rocks with red in their murderous eyes. And soon enough, the Goblin King has stepped forth to face his old rival, the orc leader. I wonder how much popcorn Cain is going through just sitting back with a smug grin by now. Blinking through the rocks on his tip-tippity toes, the man himself is going back to the cave to see how progress is coming along. He lands back on the stony cliff overlooking the mountainous region and heads into the snake's lair. The bosses should be fighting by now, and since they both rival Hargon in strength, it won't be over any quicker than his battle with the previous Lizard King. With all this chaos and bodies dropping like flies to poison, he's eager to see what kind of monster the snake would become and just how far he could push. Whoa, that's a big boy. The old Snake King over there ain't having none of their mercy, please, as it is quite drunk on the blood right now. After killing its final worshipper in the cave, the snake seems to sense the ongoing battle in the southwest. It's unable to contain the rampant hunger and actively chooses to screech something fierce and burrow through the ground to get there at record speed. Come on boys, let's get it! Apparently the snake was so tough as an enemy that it was never supposed to be down here in the tutorial, but somehow it is. There's gotta be a reason it is, right? A place where it can hide and recoup the used strength while digesting the food. Indeed, there it is, and it's frigid in there. But it pays off because sitting in front of him is a humanoid mythical root. Don't mind if I... Yes, thank you very much. Judging by the boy's age, it looks to be around 300 years old, where the peak of its power from ingestion comes at 500. Cain is about to steal it from right under the snake's nose. Walking across the moon-enchanted ice towards the kid, he goes to pluck it and the child jumps. Dex's knives almost nail it as you can't move well in this enclosed space. It lands and screams at him like those root things out of a certain wizarding book that shall not be named, and looks up just in time to dodge the ice falling towards it. This is enough for Cain to start ingesting its power. His body's transformation sequence resumes after the magic goes up, reaching a new peak of 42.9% and halting there, turning his body into that of a half-dragon. He has gained the magic circulation skill as an extra bonus. Meanwhile, on the battlefield where Squad 1 was completely wiped out, the not-so-dead guy gets back up and puts together why Cain is doing this in record time. He's got a hidden piece from the tutorial, and Smart Man over here is going to try and steal it from underneath his nose. I double dare you to try, mate. I want to see just how OP he's gotten now. Standing amidst the ice cave and staring into his stat screen, having finally revealed the secret he'd been needing to increase his body transformation percentage, absorbing all the magic he could. Controlling his magic flow would be a vital skill to learn as well. Spotting something shiny on the ground, though, he picks it up. A locket picturing Galliard and his family. This must be what the poor Dark Elf was looking for and why he hated that snake so much. Cain slips it into his pocket after staring for a few minutes, resolving himself to return the lost memories to their rightful owner. Putting his ghostly white mask back on, it's time to turn that serpent into a fancy purse. Out on the big battlefield, what little remains of the three races fight on in agony to end the orcs for perceived attacks against their nations. The ground begins to rumble and shake as the two leaders are locked into a sword fight, and eventually into a temporary recluse from battle to figure out what the royal F is going on. All heck breaks loose as the ground loosens below them, soil giving away to the Akashic snake. It sees no end to the food source and begins to ingest as much as it possibly can, gobbling up the Kobold King and everything behind him. With poisonous breath, or acidic, I can't really tell, there's nothing that stands a chance against it. The Goblin King vacates his current battle, and the Orc King orders that the god be appeased. I'd like to see you try. The giant black snake won't stop roaring out like a Fortnite player on illegal substances. James, please. At least until the Goblin King comes raging out of nowhere with his axe. Putting a new blowhole in the Mamba's head, it writhes in pain while the Orc King attacks his own god, seeming to realize that it ain't no deity he wants to worship. Cain watches the battlefield from his perch of stone, noticing the snake is much bigger than it needs to be as a result of the battlefield lacking 9/10 of its monsters. The kings are at their wits' end, and it's now time to clean up shop and claim his reward bags. Better than loot boxes since infinity. He gets atop the snake's head and uses Bathory's magic dagger to chew away any points the serpent has, claiming them all for himself and completing 2 quests with 1 stone, earning an additional 8,000 karma. Her ladyship seems to really favor him, huh? After this, he guts the snake and takes its core out, devouring it with the vampiric dagger once more. Absorbing both Akashic and Venom energy, still less than what's present in the latest COD lobby, his awakening continues at record pace while the kings stare at him with a little bit of life remaining lit behind their eyes. All your energy will belong to me. Now come over here. Get hit and come to your senses. If anyone remembers that line, you are a legend and thanks for being a part of our channel. The eyes of a hunter stare down the 2 biggest members of this battlefield. It finally clicks for the Orc King that this is the person who caused all the mayhem. Charging Cain blinded by rage, newsflash, bad idea, the guy has his head taken off and soul sent to the afterlife. The Goblin King knows what's coming after seeing this and basically gives up, knowing he can't fight a man like this. The only things left for the remaining monsters to do was either run away in complete terror or fight to the bitter end. Those that choose the former, he let go, because small fry aren't worth a lick of his time. However, those that fought, well, you've seen what he did to the bosses. After removing their guarantee on life, he'd collected the remnants of their life essence with the dagger and became stronger and stronger with every kill made. The bodily awakening also began to increase up to a point, exhausting what little reserve energy Cain had set for this task. Telling the guy in hiding to come out of the shadows already so he could die, the bloodstained member of Squad 1 steps into the limelight without an arm and wounds everywhere. How did Cain know he was there in the first place? Only a moron wouldn't, since the raw emotion wasn't concealed very well, if at all. He wants to take all the monster-like power for himself. Oh my god, really? What is it with the weak trying to control the strong? Oh good, an arrow finally pierced through that thick skull of his. Putting his bow back on his, back, after taking the head of the survivor, Galliard approaches and asks if Cain is the reason the force suddenly went Chaos 9000. Cain just laughs tiredly under his breath and brings out the gift he'd been planning for the elven man, the locket he'd found in the ice cave, and then passes out onto him. Guess that his payment for the gift was to be looked over while resting. His body finishes its transformations, going from half dragon to incomplete dragon at 92.5% before halting once again. Waking up to notifications panels that pierce the heavens as much as James, our friendly YouTube associate, pierces me with fear, Cain looks at his stats to find everything over 100 and magic over 200. Pouring magic into his hand as a test, the blue glow we've all come to expect envelops it within a strange but familiar feeling. In his own words, like he'd grown another limb. With the efficiency he could get by using the power right, he should start training with a few more offensive spells. His senses also became much sharper. His eyes feel sensitive to the light, and his nose is overwhelmed like when heightened senses was first initiated. Galliard had helped him out a bit. He needed a place to relax after doing many things to strengthen his body, so the elf was happy to help. However, Cain had absorbed way too much power before his body could properly digest it all. He would have exploded or lost control had Galliard not done something. Undine's glass was one of Galliard's special secret skills that he gave to nobody. Thus it left Cain wondering if it was originally designed and created to be used on the bodies of living creatures. Deciding he's done with resting, Cain is already up and ready to kick some butt after a good few hours. I think? It's unclear, but he's already gotten good at using Shunpo. Oh, that's a name change from Blinking Steps. Sorry if it's confusing, translations be like that sometimes. Using less than 1% of magic with the steps was enough to give it a tangible boost. But if he hasn't been using movement skills efficiently up till now, and his body was only 92% completed, what would the remaining 8 in mastery over time do for him? Landing a little ways away behind a few rocks, he opens the menu and accepts the rewards from his quest. The first one is that monster rush he created and stopped. He's awarded a black bracelet from the snake's corpse, having belonged to the owner of that menace of a serpent. There is now a chance he can reap souls by killing things. Said souls can be used as a power-up and will provide curses upon hitting something. This is one heck of a rare item, so rare in fact that all of its other skills are deactivated and sealed. Those must be where the OG powers lay dormant. Maybe something like the use its owner intended for. Dragon Eye syncs with the bracelet and allows him to see dead souls around the area, all the victims from the snake lingering around him. Y'all about to have a real bad day, fellas. Slicing through ghosts and reaping a soul, he tests out the Black Blade's edge by hurling an attack using the captured essence. It's the very best when it comes to offensive magic, which is perfect timing given what he was talking about earlier. Slashing ahead with the effects of dark magic after going around a corner, it rockets towards a wall and leaves a massive crack dent in the surface of the stone. Just by eyeballing it, each of the attacks by the skill must contain the curse attribute, and if that's the case on his blade, then what would it be like if combined with his magic power? Slaying 5 more ghosts and pouring their souls into a blazing fire, it begins to expand and take on the form of an explosion. Getting out of the way and seeing the mini crater left behind by what he just done, Cain puts together that yes, this will indeed be a useful skill. The explosion could have blown off the head of most forest mobs on its own, yet that was only the power of 5 souls. What kind of effects would it have if he used the power of every single soul that remains here, I wonder? That's something he'll save to find out with a boss of some kind. And seeing what rewards the other quest holds, it's a title with some cool stats. The Eye of the Goblin King and the monster's 5-color gem, which boosts his already heightened senses even more. That evening, he's back at Galliard's place, having helped the elf clean up, and is planning to leave for Block F within the next little while. He reminds Galliard of someone from the past, Cain's brother, and begins to wonder if the two are somehow related. More than you know, buddy. Everyone who climbs this tower has a past, and it's that which determines how they move forward. If it wasn't for that, they would have never found a reason in coming to such a dark place as this, entering the game of hell. Cain is also given the sword of the guy his elf friend had shot down with that arrow, pointing out that he must have quite the grudge against Adang for them to send guys after him. The tassel on its end is proof of who it belonged to. Something clicks in his mind that the men who were sent after him weren't just from the scav groups he fought off with Khan and Doyle, but the Adang guild from the Azure Sword clan. Things are gonna get messy in a hurry, aren't they? Hooray, more content for us. His brother and Arta deal with the scavs. Then Adang appeared as an organization of the human farms, and now most recently, Khan and Doyle had all but disappeared. Those two would be strong enough to handle themselves, but if their opponents were of the Azure Sword, things would be radically different. But that's not his goal right now. His goal is to go and avenge his brother in any way he can, not to save 2 acquaintances he'd been hired by. 5 swords pierced his little bro's heart. 3 of them had come from people whom had called themselves kings. 1 of them had come from his lover, and the final had come from a person he had once called his friend. Outside his house after the meal, and presumably looking into his eyes, Galliard asks, "Have you decided to go to war?" Yeah, he knows. His race and clan are famous for their penchant for war, so of course he'd know. The attitude and piercing gaze tell everything he needs to know. Galliard even offers his help in the fight, and while having such an experienced ranger would be a good thing in the long run, it was alright to go without him this time. This is Cain's war. He's not going to sacrifice anyone else's lives for that. And on a side note, rescuing Khan and Doyle was a secondary objective. His goal is to get revenge for the brother that the 5 on top had slew in cold blood, and shaking the very foundations of the Azure Sword clan was a massive step towards that. Seeing that he won't be swayed in any way, the older elf just wishes him good luck on his journey and bids him farewell. If this is his war alone to fight, then it's time to bear the fangs. Now on to the bigger questions. Why would Adang be running a human farm in the first place when it's so inefficient? Tedious even. Something is fishy here, and if he can leverage that against the clan, it'll help him big time with the revenge. He'll be finishing this war in a single day. Meanwhile, in Adang's base within Block F as night falls, Commander Build asks his lackey where the masked man is. They still can't find Cain because Block E is a giant section of wilderness. Single-handedly, he had downsized Adang by 70% by way of the monster rush, and the remainder was swept away. Even the branch members for this tutorial got overwhelmed and disappeared. It would be borderline impossible to rebuild a group right now, and as soon as the island knows what happened when the tutorial ends, he'd be in big trouble. The only solution so far was completing a certain stone. For all its benefits, the stone was incredibly tedious to create because the materials, be it human lives or monster souls, were always in short supply and hard to collect. But they just got some pretty decent ingredients in stock. Oh dear, I don't like that smile. At best, they can tell he's heading straight for them in Block F, so they need to go out and find Cain right the frick now before he can cause any more damage. In the meantime, he goes down to check on Khan and Doyle, who are hanging out in the dungeon. Don't at me, they made the pun. They should be honored because soon they'll be part of the glorious stone that shouldn't exist in reality, but it does anyway because frick physics, I guess. But while Khan is hanging his head in shame for getting Doyle involved in something like this, an explosion actually shakes the dungeon from above, causing both men to look up. This place was designed specifically to withstand earthquakes. What the hell could be doing such things to such a construction? Build goes above ground to a plume of volcanic-looking flame that the artist really did justice, and Cain starts walking out the smoke and ashes floating up from the debris he's just broken. Using Goblin's feet to quickly dash into the crowd of enemies, he hits the closest one with 3 different blade strikes. The Goblin King's eye spots danger from an unseen location and he dodges. 3 men face him and get the bang end of the Black Blade's attack, curses and all. The others surrounding them try and flee in pure terror, only to have little masses of dark flames spawn next to them like little fiery marbles of death, removing more corrupted players from existence. If they won't be the ones coming to him, then Cain would be the guy going to them. Getting ready to pounce from amidst the flames of war, this mad lad is only stopped by Build yelling not to move from atop the highest point of the building. Yeah, like that'll work. The soldiers are relieved at the appearance of their big boss in this base. Surely he can kick some protagonist butt. "How dare you come here," yells Mucho Build. "Editors, please give him a mustache and a sombrero. I'll wait a second." That second seems to be enough for Cain to recognize the little bee of a man. He's one of the men who worked under that evil man. One of the few who stood aside smirking while Leonte, his brother's best friend, pierced his heart with the final sword. Ho ho ho, as Jontron so elegantly put it, 2 kids gonna die tonight. The first of many murders, I'll bet, and I can't wait. More action. Putting together who this guy is fills Cain with determination to get him out of the way as soon as humanly possible. Or is it dragonly possible now? Ah well, who cares. Lighting his body with all the magic he can muster and holding his twin daggers, Cain promises his little brother that they will be his first gift to him in the afterlife. For now, one of the men named Grant is to send a message to this island and tell them a strange dude came looking for Adang. But Grant doesn't even get to turn around before his face is taken off by an indiscriminate explosion. "Stop wasting my time and come at me if you're going to attack," says Cain. "One problemo, Chief. You may be one of the best offensive players in your clan, but you're up against someone who has seen modern warfare and its tactics. Cain is going to wipe the floor with you in mere minutes." We start to learn that Build had begun to feel resentment against the boss for not being able to work with him. This was after Leonte had joined the Azure Sword as an executive, which is pretty up there in terms of rank. With everything falling into place, he doesn't quite have a use for Build anymore, and the man is rather surprised to find that a player from the tutorial can already stand against him. Build actually sucks at fighting, as his edge got dull, and after an intensive fight scene we don't get the luxury of seeing, he's on the floor spitting up blood and missing an arm. The rookie members try giving their lives to save him, but you can guess how that goes. Even using his ultimate puppeteer skill isn't enough in this situation. He controls the others to make a wall of bodies between him and Cain, while he runs for the basement, probably towards his potential saving grace that is the stone he was babbling on about. Build is the only member of Adang remaining alive at this point. Khan is wondering what the ever-loving is happening above ground, as he was thinking of going out with the Big Bang as well. But at this current rate, they'd all be buried alive. How could one dude be this unlucky in his life? Doyle pipes up that he's the unlucky one, always getting caught up in shenanigans following the older one around, and to this, Khan gets a bit angry and a chibi battle ensues from within chains. "Trying to rebel against your young, are you?" Yeah, it's a promise he made to himself to do it at least once. But the two of them are shocked to hear Cain's voice coming from out the doorway when they speak of the legendary sword's location. They can still tell him where it is. Oh har har, Ha should get them out of there. He breaks them free of the chains and Doyle is immediately thankful at being rescued, appreciative of him. But Cain was just passing through and thought to bust a lock on their little cage while he was down here. Oh, how thoughtful. Khan tries to thank him with a heart, but he's brushed off. The dude's body begins to throb and ache everywhere and then some, which makes him wonder if they'll leave alive. Yeah, but maybe not with their sanity intact through the sea of corpses above. They'd be a burden if they tried to escape on their own right now, so they would be better off staying in their cell for the time being until the chaos clears. They'd take care of themselves from here on out. Nah, Chief, everyone do be dead. He had wiped the Adang Guild with all due haste and left nobody except Build out. Then Khan asked the question of if he had come down to this floor of the dungeon. Guess that means Cain was right. A secret is stashed somewhere below the surface. He has no idea what it is, but it was created with the lives of players, so it must be powerful. The three of them walk down a long hallway of cold stone. No sunlight and many metal doors stained by dry blood. This is one of those human farms, one that the Adang actually hid well during their free trial of life. The smell of rotting corpses was especially strong in these halls, an aroma of death that permeates the frigid air. Cain knows that the greatest ingredients for alchemy are a human body and soul, but because these processes that include such things have all been outlawed, they were dangerous and extremely costly to keep up. But using both these things to create an unholy mesh of some kind, Build was a special kind of fluffed up. But then, surrounding him come all manner of white sheet-like ghosts with faces not far from his own. They are more than eager to aid Cain and get revenge on the man who had sacrificed them all for his evil plans. But the man has one condition they must fulfill to do so. We cut to Build bursting into a room full of vials and things with plenty of light behind him. He goes straight for the glowing red stone that is clearly bad news. His companions all rose through the ranks in the time he'd been spending down here creating this little whatever the heck it is. Ingesting the stone and trying to keep calm, he can't help but get frustrated when nothing happens. There was something he'd missed in its creation. "So this is how far you ran," Cain says from the other end of the room. So that's the stone they had wasted all their time making? Don't look like much of a reward for what he had to go through in its construction. Why? Why was Kane harassing him like this? What had Build ever done to him? It's then that Kane takes off his mask and lets it fall to the ground beside him. Does that face answer his question? Build takes a few steps back, memories ringing in his ears as the words slowly appear in his mind. Impossible! Kane takes a few steps closer, being a practical spitting image of his brother. After a torturing montage that we thankfully don't get to see, as I value our monetization, Kane began to learn about things in the tower after Jungwoo's death. The disbandment of Arita brought all the changes, such as all the remaining members of Arita going their own ways and getting everything they had desired. He wanted to believe that there was at least one person who had felt sorry for what had happened. But, well, I guess not. Build now begs for death, which Kane won't give him. But at a finger snap, a lot of Build's old friends from the dungeons appear as skeletal black figures. The souls got massively boosted by his bracelet and were now more physical in their revenge. However, it came at the cost of their allegiance to Kane as servants. The man picks up his white mask from where it lay on the ground, smiling just a little as he walks away to leave Build to his fate. He begs and cries, yelling for freedom from this torture, but all of it falls upon deaf ears. He only wants to die in peace, but that ain't happening. With the base now destroyed and Build having clawed his way out with a dying breath, his horribly mutilated corpse lays at peace on the rubble of his little empire. Then, Kane spots what's left over of the man, the purple stone he had swallowed and tried to activate. It cannot be identified, which means it likely has no use to him, and items like this are largely considered junk in Block F. He can't afford to leave it behind though. Going to pick it up, his touch makes the thing glow a hot white and dissolve, spiraling into his chest. Even trying to push it away with magic isn't working, so we just have to deal with the facts of life for now. It's here to stay. Anyhow, he goes out of the camp to regroup with Khan and Doyle, who are waiting patiently among the jagged rocks for this young to finish up his business. Kane really didn't hold himself back, huh? They got their reasons, but why is going at them so hard like this? Of course, that's a secret. When they ask what happened to Build, the answer is obvious, though Doyle still can't believe the Azure Sword clan would do something like this. He'd wanted to finish off the despicable man himself, but that never happened because he lacked the strength. Poor kiddo just wanted to get his own form of justice, eh? Leave that to those who can fight properly, trust me. Khan seems to agree as he says to the younger boy, Doyle, I think this is as far as we'll get. And then throwing Kane their supply of tokens. The two were going to retire this time around. While Kane was opening a can of whoop on the Arang, Khan and Doyle had been talking and they concluded that they won't be able to make it past Block G in this state. The weaker players would just catch him off guard and destroy them in the rankings. What Kane wasn't told in the diary, however, is that he could try the tutorial again in a later round if he failed this one. However, the tutorials don't have set times nor dates. The tower will automatically run one when it feels the need to, drawing from the reserve. But hey, even if he stressed himself out for no reason, at least Kane had met some good players right off the bat. They're basically telling him to take their tokens and leave since it was better than letting them go to waste. Besides, if it's Kane, he could give Fonte and Adora a jolly good punch up in the final rounds of the tutorial. Though Khan looked kind of hideous a moment ago and the two are arguing, this does make Kane wonder what the two topmost rankers in this level are like. So he asks the two boys, and oh boy does he get an answer. Those two are utter monsters. Khan had tried to get ahead of them a couple times, but they were truly terrifying. But hey, since they're basically giving him their spot at the top, Kane could do his best in their stead and give those two a right beating. It is now that Kane decides to equip Hargon's crown and head for the hidden piece his friends were after, deep in the lair of the Thorn Moles. But as he had started bringing these creatures down one by one and came to meet the boss monster in the final room, it became very clear why he needed the crown. It was strong enough that it may have outlasted the Akashic Snake. If he hadn't gotten the attack power he needed from the crown, there was no chance in heck he was going to get anywhere near the Blade of Vigrid. This sword is the trump card he needs to close the distance between himself and the siblings, and even Mr. Goblin Manager is surprised that he's gotten it. Kane had started the tutorial a week late and monopolized all the hidden pieces, giving him the edge. But for now, Mr. Goblin has to relock the security cameras for some reason beyond me. As Kane enters Block G, he can't help but be just a tad nervous as this one was more than just mere token wars. This was a pure PvP stage where he would be forced to fight other players to prove his worth. There are only two things listed in the diary for the section of the tutorial: Battle Royale and Madhouse, a place where all the top players of every rank are compressed into a single area to determine who's really on top. And past the crowd of stunned spectators who have their swords drawn, swearing that these are monsters, the two tops of the food chain reside in battle. The Horn Tribe, among all of the beings in the tower, they are said to be incarnations of the subconscious. As Fonte proves, they are no joke in strength or willpower. Without a lick of hesitation, he charges at the enemies before him who try several skills to block their opponent, all of which fail horribly as he smashes through them. Magic, physical, it doesn't seem to matter what he's up against. Fonte has the tenacity and force to push through anything. Proceeding to beat up everyone else in the area with lightning fast punches and no concept of the word mercy, he claims them to be nothing more than standing scarecrows in the face of his awesome power. The rest of the men stand back in shock as the forward players are brought down a few notches, beaten into comas or straight up death. He then turns to them, dropping the grin ever so briefly while the men raise their swords and break into cold sweats. "Didn't I say not to stand around like idiots and do something?" he yells excitedly, coming for them with a flurry of fists. Kane watches from the side as he wipes out an entire squad with ease, proving why he was able to take care of the Akashic snakes so darn easily. But the one who really catches his attention is Edora, the silent but deep woman whose long straight hair runs over a small frame. Fonte's younger sister and the first ranked in this tutorial. Khan had said that facing Fonte was like looking at a tall mountain of a man, but facing Edora was somehow different, like looking into the ocean. At least when it comes to the former, you can just look up and see the tips of those mountains reaching into the sky, but you can't see the bottom of an ocean. That girl was hiding something. She looks his direction and sees something in him, giving a small smile. Well, shoot, he got discovered. He'd wanted to observe just a bit longer, but guess there's no helping it now. Kane pours out all his tokens into the floor in a mass of blue marbles. Combining all the tokens he had gathered in block ENF into one giant glowing yellow orb, the tutorial rankings update and Kane is put in first place over the twins. Oh, that's gonna peeve them off. This is the very first time someone else had stolen first place since the start of the tutorial. But now that all of Kane's bait had been cast, it was time to bring out the big guns and defend his new title of being number 1. Drawing Vigrid from his backpack, the Frost Sword has a unique description of being a demon sword after killing its last owner. Most of its abilities got sealed by this, though even the display of its power isn't enough to ward off the hungry players vying for first place. After all, it's impossible for him to handle this many people alone, right? I wouldn't be so sure about that. Vigrid was a weapon wielded by legendary heroes or warriors, and even though most of its features have been sealed by the transformation into a demonic sword, the few left make it an asset to any player. The first is Blessing of the Sword, which is what Khan and Doyle were planning to use against the twins. In short, the more enemies there are, the stronger it gets, and he can further pulse out its power by using the several hundred souls he had stored. Many people try to block him, but none manage to do it right. As the men cover their eyes and look away from the dust cloud created by a single fierce attack, Kane is standing waiting for anyone dumb enough to approach him, JoJo style. But while Khan and Doyle may have focused on the sword's blessing for that major power gap, there was a second hidden option Kane could use to his advantage. Now laying on the floor after being cut down, a sickening green glow spreads out from the dead man as Blessing Contagion is activated. The last victim to fall will pass a curse onto enemy players. And you're telling me this thing was once a holy sword? Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. But with the small fry now being taken care of, that left Edora open to attack since nobody else could. Oh, wait, no. Fonte wants a fight. Guess you'll have to kick his butt harder than teachers do their students. This is exactly what he was waiting for though. A real fight, not some petty dropkick of a bunch of weaklings. He turns to ask his sister permission if he can go, and she allows it on the condition that the points they collected stay with her. That's over 60,000 tokens he's just handed over to his sister. But he does say out loud that idiots such as them shouldn't compare themselves to the strong. Okay, yeah, please eradicate this man. Lady Karma, you got some work to do. Among the Horn tribe, the Chongram family has a secret skill passed down by blood. Yada yada. Oh look, he has Lightning Fist now. He can just get those karma points back. Oh, he's gonna get them back alright. As Kane and Fonte clash, Aurora Frost versus Lightning busts out of the arena in equal measure as the skies lit up. Kane still manages to hold his ground, using the blade in a backhanded configuration like many would wield a dagger. Stabbing it into the ground, the ruptures that flow out cut the purple-haired ogre and actually begin to push him back. An impressive feat considering all the things this dude has accomplished with his sister. He'd learned various techniques, been born into the royal family, and even increased his magic by absorbing the Akashic Snake's core. Guess what? Kane did too. But what unnerves him the most is when Fonte begins laughing and activated the King's Rule, the skill his father had given him so he could prove the right he had to rule. This was starting to get really amusing. Now all he had to do was down Kane with those fists of crackling lightning and re-earn his spot in second place. But the soldier won't go down without a fight. He blocks the whirlwind of frontal attacks using Vigrid's lengthy blade while Edora just stands off to one side, watching, analyzing. Her deep golden eyes seem to see something nobody else does. But before he could worry about that, Fonte's attack had created such a dust cloud that Kane's visibility was now marred. No telling what direction the attack would come from. Yes, there is. It's always from behind because it looks cool. Kane gets hammered in the side by a fist, followed by several more of them which make the indomitable man spurt blood from under his white mask. Fonte grabs his head as they both fall, preparing another lightning attack for the finale of a hit. At least that's what should have happened. Why didn't such a thing happen, you may ask? Well, dear viewer, for those of you who look back at his abilities, there's one he has yet to use: Foresight. Seeing the future, albeit with extreme disorientation as a balance to the power of the skill, it also consumes a great amount of mana, even when allowing him to see a total of 5 seconds ahead. But when he would need to use even half of that was questionable. So instead of what he just saw, Kane knows that Fonte is coming from behind and uses Dragon Eyes, Combat Will, and Heightened Senses to strengthen his body. This allows him to slip behind Fonte with Shunpo and unleash the full raw power of magic circulation to boost his strength enough to pull Fonte's arm behind his back. The purple-haired horn dude tries to final punch at his aggressor, but this was indeed over for him. Using Vigrid as a reverse dagger, Kane puts his opponent into a state of unconsciousness by cutting him deeper than your crush's rejection. The guy passes out mid-air, bruised and bloody, falling backwards to the floating earth, while Kane goes for his real objective down here. With the remaining second, Edora is targeted and we finally see the woman do something more than just stand idly around. She draws her huge blade from its red sheath and blocks Vigrid's attack, having a dagger thrown at her from under Kane's blade. From this, she should fall unconscious from blood loss by his attack. But of course that's not how things go. She deflects the dagger and surprises him in doing so, even though he never made a mistake in the trajectory nor aim. She takes a little breath and prepares to strike with the big heavy blade, forcing Kane into a retreat to not get skewered and admitting his strength. Whatever those golden eyes were hiding, they were able to see through his foresight. Just as Fonte had inherited the lightning fist from his father, Edora had also been granted a gift in form of the skill Insight, which can see the truth through many fields of BS, allowing its user to get a pretty good picture of what will happen. It's also why foresight was useless in front of her. And with his 3 seconds having passed, she asks if he's planning on continuing their little fight. No? Smart move. He's indeed got strength and actual skill. The meaning of that word has been so butchered by now, and she actually wouldn't mind giving him first place. But they got their own reasons for this. Odd. What makes her think he gave up? Holding all of her tokens, he's already won. You clever git. Your eyes can only see what's in sight, right? Oh, that's clever. Foresight can see from a third-person perspective then. The dagger he had thrown wasn't aimed at ropes holding those orbs to her waist. The rankings update again, and he's now so far up in the lead that there's no chance for anyone to catch up. He's done it, lads. He still would have placed first without these tokens, but taking them to assure his victory was a really smart play. And from that moment on, he's called a hoarder by the rest of the players. Using Shampoo to get away, Edora doesn't even have a second to stop him before Kane just poofs into thin air. This was their first loss. With the tutorial finally over, everyone is summoned to the waiting room where people begin to recognize Kane the hoarder. Would it have been better for him not to enter Block G? Probably, since it had brought him way too much attention to him and his antics. But being first in the tutorial was the only way to earn Zeus's key. There were 2 places he had to visit when entering the tower, the Arditas clan house and the Treasure of Olympus. And then comes a familiar voice from the rear of the room. Yul comes towards him, having found the Frisia garden. His presence is completely different now. He thanks Kane and lets him know that he'd found a master, and that he'd come find him in the tower one day. Yor then disappears in a twirl of magic, unraveling while the goblin manager laughs his way out of a portal which appears on a podium above all the players. Avolkega thanks them for all their hard work and announces the rankings. He really got over 500,000 points, where the average for most high rankers in the other tutorials was 50 to 100,000 points at max. From behind him, Fonte is way less than pleased at being kicked off his high horse, where his sister actually congratulates Kane? Using his dragon eyes, he can tell she's being sincere with the words, and there's zero hostility to speak of. Why? With Kane placing highest in score out of everybody and highest on any of the tutorials ever held, Avolkega and the tower see it fit to reward him for this feat of strength. A menu flashes up before him, asking if he would like his name to go down in the Hall of Fame. Having a chance to put your name there is an honor every player wishes for but few get, and yet he declines. Tutorial rewards are then handed out, but while his is a good start, it's nothing in particular that he wants, all except for one: Zeus's key. Those who don't know its value lose or discard it easily. It's obviously one of 11 others that are needed to form a completed key and open the treasury, but it'll be worth it collecting those other pieces. The little goblin in a top hat then declares the tutorial to be over. Thanking everyone for all their hard work and probably intoned for the amusing show they gave him, those who qualify for the tower would get a notification soon enough. The exit is below him. Kane gets the notification immediately, but he's also called by Fonte before he goes. The guy telling him to follow to a more desolate area so they could fight man to man. If he's a real warrior, then he won't be likely to refuse now, will he? Actually, a real warrior doesn't pick fights they can't win, you dingus. Kane just sighs to that point and surrenders to him, saying that Fonte won. He won't come after an opponent who's given up, will he now? While Fonte gamer rages on the above, since his ego is deflated, rumors in the tower very quickly start overtaking the floors. The one who overtook the first ranking, the one who got over 500,000 points on his first ever attempt, and completely monopolized Block G and kicked the royal twins of the Horn Tribe in the shimmies. The one they all seem to nickname the Hoarder. Many started looking to recruit him into their folds, and even more tried learning everything they could about this mysterious rookie. The first and most noticeable thing about the town he arrived in was the obelisk of God standing tall above the clouds in its center. His goal was at the tippity top where all the lying big fish were. But for now, he had another goal. He needed to go and find the people in a certain photo his brother left him. Walking around and searching idly for a certain building, he finds the place which looks like it's about to fall over to a breath of a big bad wolf. The stuff within the store is of a pretty good grade too, all seeming to be forged by Hanova the dwarf. But among the crowd of cleaned weapons, armor, and so forth in the store, only one stands out. Something his dragon eyes can't read. The only reason for this is because it's broken beyond repair or exceptional. And then in behind him comes a bar of light as the door is open, a little man who we can assume the name of stepping back into his store. When Kane turns around to look at who's in the light back there, he finds a very old, haggard-looking dwarf who matches perfectly in face and body to the faded photo his brother was in. the one person he could rely on entirely within the confines of the tower, going so far as to say he was the only one who could be leaned on, even mentioning him being a father figure of sorts. Kane states that he'd come to purchase a weapon from the store, and Hinova points out the mere state of the place. Yeah, and? Good stores don't have to look the best. Diamond in the rough. But maybe the reason he ain't been wanting to sell so far is because Arita disbanded? Ooh, hit a nerve there. Yes, he did. Also, gotta say, this dude really got that Minecraft villager nose. Looking back at Kane with angry white eyes and the worst get off my lawn glare I've ever seen, the old man's arms shake while holding up a pile of swords in his arms. Or maybe those are molds, I can't tell. He warns Kane just wants to not talk about things that he has no bearing on, but that only confirms the truth. Arita was basically his best customer, and while not officially a part of the group, being a non-player, Hinova was their executive blacksmith. If Hinova is worried that the other clans who now want him will harass Kane, that shouldn't really be a big problem. In fact, it might be what this protagonist wants. Once they show their hand, he has a reason to show his. Kane jokes at first about having no money, but pulls out a sack of it that he got from Galliard, at least telling Hinova that he's trustworthy. The Dark Elf would never give this to someone he didn't think was worthy of it. Kane shows the items that he got from the tutorial to the dwarf, and they are apparently all foundational items for a certain artifact. Then he notices the Beast Lord's helmet and the Egg of Iblis. The dwarf legit asks, "Are you fluffing with me right now?" To which he's told obviously not. But if these items altogether weren't worth the price of that dagger he wanted, then maybe by his reaction they could help pay for a certain commissioned item? The Eye of Guess, a giant that has dozens of arms and hundreds of eyes. An artifact named after such a monster would be well worth the pay he gives. But Hinova can't really blame him for the goal, since he's one of the only 5 blacksmiths alive who are able to craft such a thing. If he's really concerned with the other clans, then he shouldn't be, as Kane would take care of them. All he asks in return is that Hinova takes care of the crafting. Or if he's really too scared to. That's what I thought, Grandpa. And finally, Kane is able to analyze the dagger, which turned out to be a gift he'd made for someone years ago, but the owner died while it was being made. I wonder who it could have belonged to. Looking down at his silver pocket watch in the light of the moon, Kane has realized that it's beginning to move ever so slowly. The clock is beginning to wind itself up bit by bit. It'll be enough though. But for now, on a more important note, there were a lot of people tailing him throughout the city right now. 15? No, 17. While they were nothing but annoying little runts who would most likely be after his gold pouch or to harass him from the guilds or something, he had to deal with it. So of course he tricks them in the nearest dark alleyway, and the men look around confused and state outright that they cannot afford to lose him. But, well, sucks to be you, I guess. Ain't nobody got time for you creeps. He then proceeds to a restaurant after buying a cloak, throwing a bag of gold at the owner for a spot on the top floor with the table on the terrace. Who's gonna say no to someone imposing like him? While the old guy rambles on about how lucky he is that their terrace is known for its splendid nighttime view. I mean, if the editors will be kind and show this, look at that. Kane orders his drink of choice. He'd gone exploring the outer district and all its little attractions, such as another good place to eat and an aquarium with plenty of exotic fun ocean life. The next day, he goes back to Hinova to see the progress of his commission so far and see if anything else was needed. Really want to speed this along, huh? Using his dragon eyes to observe the forge master at work, Kane has only a single word come to his mind: artisan. Hinova is less than pleased at him coming to sleep in the shop after claiming to watch him work. So the grumpy old dwarf yeetus Deletus a hammer at him, which Kane catches without effort. Now he just needs to be shown how to start the fire and he'd be well on his merry way. Meanwhile, back in the tutorial, someone in a very fancy blue robe is flanked by 2 subordinates while checking out the remainder of Adang's little fortress. They are to find build by any means necessary and bring them back. And pulling back his fancy blue hood, we get our first look at Leonte. Back in the shop, Kane asks if Hinova is really going to teach him metallurgy. The old dwarf looks like his blood pressure is about to jump higher than Twitter's toxicity, but he cools off pretty quick and then asks what for. Kane can't show him the item he wants repaired, likely because the old man would recognize it, but what he could do is figure out how to repair it himself. Hinova accepts this much at least, but because of his work, the shy dwarf isn't able to teach Kane anything now. He'd have to learn by observation. The next day, Hinova is yelling at Kane over his shoulder with many a lecture on how to get this forging process right. He thwacks the man on his shoulder, which I'm guessing is like punching a steel plate, as Kane basically ignores it. Normally when people start working with a hammer like he had, it would take them a long time to grasp the basics. But he got it in just a few tries. It's as if he could see where to hit. You'd be jealous if you knew, Uncle. It's his first time seeing someone improve so fast. Or was it his second time? Seeing Kane made an obvious blunder on the angle again, the grumpy codger throws the smoke pipe which bounces off Kane's head like a brick wall. Later that day, Kane is walking out in the city and thinking back to his day with Hinova. It was now obvious why his brother liked the dwarf. However, as soon as his commission is finished, he disappeared from the dude's life to not bring any more trouble than it's worth. But before that, there were some annoying little rats that he needed to take care of. Men surround him, all of which seem to be from some kind of guild. These are the guys who likely kept harassing Hinova. He immediately jumps to action in taking care of them, nailing one in the back before... Wait, what? Okay, the perspective just jumps back to before the fight here, so I'm gonna assume he used foresight. Would have been nice to know beforehand. Surrounded yet again, this time the leader checks a paper while Kane is surrounded by those who probably wish to bully him into submission or death. Whatever comes first, probably. Ensuring this is their target, he throws the paper away and asks straight away why Kane had ignored their warning to not go near Hinova. In reply, he dashes forward and cuts a man open before he can blink, leaving the second target still staring with fear. One by one, they all fall down. Throwing Hinova's bayonet at one of the farther guys, he's nailed in the head. The boss thinks it's impossible for someone so fresh from the tutorial to be so strong. Well, you're looking at him, ain't ya? Kane says that if the dude takes his boys to a healer pretty quick, they may still survive. If he can, that is. Another pipes up with the line we've all come to expect from goons about, "You have no idea who you just messed with. Do you know who's backing us?" Yeah, shut your windpipe, Baldy, before he cuts it out of you. Then mistakes are made as he reveals that Kane would just end up like Old Man Hinova. Ding ding ding, we have the prize for most stupid goon in the story. Editors, let's give him a round of applause, shall we? Yeah, he done goofed so damn bad that Kane decides he only really needs one of them alive to tell the tale. After the boss takes his chance, the others are all slaughtered in cold blood. Entering the destroyed store, Kane finds a beaten and bruised Hinova lying on the floor. The men who did this had taken everything. Kane's items, his stock, even the requested commission item. But Kane doesn't care. He'll go and get everything back and make them pay for this. Hinova should stay here, since his injuries aren't severe. While the ancient dwarf does protest to this a lot, something about the way Kane acts reminds him of his little brother. The old dude is powerless to stop his new friend from going to fix this himself. On the first scene out, Kane asks his guiding hostage for his name, Willet. Okay, Willet, lie about a location and you're gonna end up like your friends. Capiche? Capiche. Good. They arrive at a certain building little Will points out, and using Dragon Eyes, Kane can see there are traps laid out everywhere already. They would be heading on inside with him going first. One of the boys approaches and asks what's wrong. It's not like him to be so quiet. Then Kane says hello by grabbing the man's arm from behind him. They call the poor guy a traitor. If that's what you call surviving, then fine. And all attack Kane one by one. Yeah, because that tactic will work without a hitch. Y'all ever read The Art of War? Sun Tzu has a lot of useful quotes, all the involving anime girls. Or the internet has played me. Anyways, one of the guys in the back yells, "Come on, we're dealing with one fluffing player that's fresh out of the tutorial." And while that may be true, his tune changes the moment Kane turns to him. Telling the other guys to stop him, the bodyguards fall like flies to doom, getting split several ways from Sunday. Fluff you, Baltimore. And I don't think I need to tell you what he does to the remaining guy. Then Kane looks down with his dragon eyes and the sound of a trap goes off, and finds someone going through underground tunnels. Not happening, bozo. Putting his foot down, the floor buckles underneath it from magic pressure. Their boss is down below trying to get what he can out of the safes, and he's pretty quick face to face with an angry MC. In his defense, he does try to wield a sword, but it goes like you think. After he's stabbed through the throat and lying dead on the floor, Kane tells one of the other dudes above to come down here if they want to live. One of the frightened boys puts down Kane's coffee while shaking in his boots, and he immediately asks if it's been poisoned. Oh come on, they know better than to try that with you. For now, they would be talking about compensation. Hinova's lost revenue from their interference, the building they destroyed, the cost for the old dwarf's mental and physical wounds, this all becoming a rather lengthy list. Oh, and they'd be paying for it all out of pocket, and fixing the building themselves. The clan that allegedly supports them wouldn't really care about their well-being as a guild, so Kane is uncaring whether they report this or not. But for the moment, he'd be taking his leave while they did their new jobs. Perhaps it would have been a good idea to make an example out of them, but before he can continue with that thought, Hinova is spotted on the street standing deep in thought. Kane clears his throat and the dude just drops a sack of riches on the floor. All the stuff they had stolen from him. He just had to go and get himself into trouble, eh? Not like this big kid was going to listen to the old man anyhow. With rumors spreading, the Horn twins now know his location in the outer district, and Edra recognizes the name Hinova. But even more amusing is the old guy's face when his shop is completely rebuilt and is sparkling new. A tsundere dwarf? Oh no. One who actually has the strength to throw a punch. After Kane thinks that the two head inside and Kane's eyes get an upgrade, they can now see flaws in an item. And as he wondered what his completed dragon body would be like if the eyes were this good already, his awakening continues from his mind expanding. Big brain time made him more well-rounded. Hopefully it didn't smooth over anything. He can even use them special eyes to see personality traits now, such as Hinova being quite a bashful fella if we couldn't tell already. Being able to see his opponent's personality means he can use their weaknesses. Though describing Hinova as quite bashful, for the first time, Kane struggles to contain his laughter. He then begins to question the master artisan about a few things regarding blacksmithing which he's told to shove off and learn himself. Which is fair enough, I guess, but you're a teacher. So instead, Kane hands him a completed sword to have a look at and the old man agrees. But if he's persistently bothered, Kane can't blame him for the slow work. The old dwarf holds the sparkliest sword I've ever seen. Wonder if it can free me of James, and doesn't even compliment it. Then out of nowhere, Kane gets a sense of danger. He barrels to the floor with Hinova as Fonte comes bursting through the wall of the freshly built shop. It is at this point my dude has had enough of people breaking his stuff, and Kane just rolls up his sleeve. Goodbye, Cloudbrain. Is Kane really going to leave Fonte just sitting in a corner like that? Probably, old dude. He got a black eye out of his rage, so there shouldn't be any more than that. Yet even when they look each other in the eye, Kane flat ignores Fonte in favor of his work. I mean, fair enough. But Fonte keeps trying to insist that the punch there didn't count. What are you, a 4th grader? Nobody but him seems to care about the intricacies of being a warrior and having pride. Certainly not Kane, who just keeps on with his work without saying a single word, nor turning around. While that's happening, Edora is invited to sit down and have a cup of tea, while her brother continues to make a fool of himself. Hinova recognizes the sword in her arms just then. It's one he'd made for a little girl out of the Horn tribe who'd pleaded with him to craft it using her big ol' eyes. Now that he remembers, there was also a troublemaking brat who got royally beat quite often for making himself a nuisance. But is Edora just going to leave her brother like that? Well, yeah, kind of. If he wants a good fight, he can beg for one all he likes. Day after day, he'd try his luck with Kane, always being ignored by the man in favor of what he was doing, such as eating, going to the bathroom? Fonte, there's something you ain't telling us, bro? But eventually, even Hinova can't take it anymore and just asks Kane to battle so this imbecile would shut up. Kane puts down his hammer. While Fonte tries to say that he has to battle to show his abilities as a warrior, hard pass. Kane only agrees when he can get Fonte's servitude out of it. They walk outside for not even a minute and come back in. The purple-haired oaf now has 2 black eyes, while Kane is just happy that he can now hammer away in peace.